Hi guys, and welcome to Sustainability on October 1st. Today we're going to be talking about what goes where, so specifically waste diversion in terms of composting, recycling, and TerraCycling. So you can see an example of compost right there in the first slide. So other than the landfill, where can I place my waste? And the answer is there's lots of other places you can put your waste. Most waste can go into recycling, composting, or vermiculture. We'll talk about that in a little bit, and TerraCycling. So those are three big places that waste can go, if you even want to call it waste, because arguably, if it can be used in a different format, it's not waste. So recycling. Recycling is such an important topic, and what I think is really important to remember is that recycling is a business and has a market. So it's not just, oh, I put something in a bin and then it goes away. There has to be someone or a company that is willing to purchase that product and make it into something completely new. This differs from upcycling in that you can upcycle at home. You can take something and make it into something new by making it a part of something that already exists. Recycling is pretty much reducing it to its original format in the form of plastic pellets, for example, or melting it or some other process and making something completely new out of it. So you've probably seen these recycling numbers on the bottom of things that you put in recycling bins, and it's 1 through 7. Some of the most common recycled items are number 1 and number 2. And you can see that with the original uses on the chart being soft drink bottles and peanut butter jars and retail bags, that kind of stuff. Very, very common, and it can be made into the items on the recycled uses column, which is very, very interesting. What's important to remember is that right now, 3, 5, and 6 are not commonly accepted in the US, and they're not accepted at UNCW. So you might be asking, why are they not accepted? And this is because of China's national sword policy. So the national sword policy in China was approved in 2018. And basically, China was previously taking over 40% of the world's recyclable items and making use to them. And so in 2018, they drastically decreased the appropriate contamination rate. So how contaminated your sampling has to be before, for them to basically reject it. So it used to be around 10%, where you could have a 10% contamination rate. Now it's about 0.5%. And so it drastically decreased the amount of plastic that China could accept and that we could give them because in the US because of contamination, which is up to 25% in the US on average, which is pretty amazing. So the reason why China did this is because Chinese recycling companies were overwhelmed with contaminated goods, and it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of money to recycle very contaminated materials. It also became, I've read, an environmental issue. The areas around the recycling plants were really struggling with the contaminants that were happening there. So while the US is not equipped to deal with recycling 5 and 6 right now, people are getting innovative and new recycling methods are popping up left and right. But right now, while we are in this waiting period, it's important to look at what you purchase and make sure that you don't put a 5 or a 6 in the recycling bin. Easiest way to do that is to always check on the bottom of what you purchase and be conscious of the cups that you use, of the yogurt containers that you use. Just check and see, is it a 1 or a 2? Or does it need to go in the trash bin? And a really great example of this is Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. Both of those companies currently offer, at least in Wilmington, North Carolina, only 5 and 6 cups. So you might be on campus and you might see tons and tons of those cups in the recycling bin. Well, they're just going to end up in the landfill. And in fact, it's not very efficient to put them in the recycling bin. So keep that in mind when you're using plastic. Look at the bottom, look at the number, and figure out if it can actually go in the recycling bin. And obviously, aside from plastic, glass and aluminum are very recyclable and are recycled in Wilmington, are accepted in Wilmington and accepted at the UNCW recycling depot. So it's recommended to visit the website of your local recycling facility, and particularly UNCW recycling, to see exactly what is accepted and what you can drop off at the depot for us, or at the recycling center for wherever you are. Alternative recycling. So this is the bulk of where people have questions. People know I can put my plastics in this bin, I can put my aluminum in this bin, but where can I put all the odd stuff that I don't know where it would go? And this is, number one, important to clean your recycling, just a little tip. But number two, UNCW recycling offers a lot of incredible opportunities to recycle alternative items. And these are just a couple of examples. So if you have styrofoam, that's typically not accepted at recycling bins across the US. But here at UNCW, we do accept it, and you can place it next to any indoor recycling bin or deliver it to the depot, which is located on Lionfish Drive. They also take electronics and e-waste, and they have a bin for that at the depot. And they take things like toner cartridges, super odd things that you wouldn't have expected could be recycled, are available on their website. So if you go to UNCW Recycling's website, just search on Google, they have a complete list there that you can reference, and you can figure out exactly where you need to take those items. Here's some other oddly recyclable items. You can take tires to the New Hanover County landfill, up to 5 a day. In case you have more than 5 a day, you're probably gonna have to go on 2 separate days. You can take light bulbs to batteries and bulbs. They have several locations in Wilmington. You can take car batteries and motor oil to AutoZone and actually receive a discount, which is pretty cool. And some more things that can be accepted at New Hanover County landfill are cooking oil and antifreeze. And another fantastic resource that we have here in Wilmington associated with the New Hanover County landfill is the Has Wagon. So it's basically a mobile location for picking up your hazardous waste and your composting. So you can take a look at New Hanover County Has Wagon, just look on Google and you'll find the website, and it will provide an entire list of all the things that they can accept from you and where they are at different times of the week. So on different days, they're at different locations around New Hanover County. Some of the amazing options that they have for recycling: they can recycle acids, aerosols, hoverboards. They specifically put hoverboards on their website. I thought this was very interesting. Propane tanks, pesticides, fuels, and more. So they recycle all kinds of things that you can bring, which is very exciting. So, let's go back. Composting. Composting is a really big, super big topic right now. It's really hot. And that's ironic too, because composting is usually very warm. So what is composting? Composting is utilizing biological decomposition of organic materials to create a rich, humus-like soil mixture. And this soil mixture can be put back into the soil system and contribute to agriculture and horticulture. So what does composting do? Why is it important? Composting diverts waste that would end up rotting in a landfill if it wasn't composted. And that rotting process releases methane, which is a greenhouse gas. So it's a great way to divert that waste and the waste that it would have created in the landfill as well. It can improve the local soil health and once again go back into that local soil system through agriculture and horticulture. Compost-friendly items include food scraps, bioplastics, paper products, depends on the ink usage, but usually most are accepted, coffee grounds and tea leaves, paper towels, and more. And the reason why I put an exclamation point beside paper towels is because at UNCW in particular, if you were to go through a dumpster and count out all of the items by number, paper towels, they take up so much of the trash that we produce here at UNCW. And that's an important thing to remember, that composting is another way that we can make use of that waste and turn it into something that's fantastic for our local soil. And then I also put images of bioplastics to the right so you can see what a bioplastic is. Bioplastics are typically made of things like corn and cane sugar and other plants, and they are built to break down in high heat compost facilities. So these are not for your backyard compost piles. They're not really going to break down there. And examples of brands that do this are Eco Products, World Centric, Greenware, and Vegware. You've probably seen, if you eat on UNCW's campus, you've definitely received something in an Eco Products container, which is exciting that we are able to do that at UNCW. And all these brands have different certifications and methods for composting their materials. So make sure you don't put these in your backyard compost, and make sure you don't throw them away. Find some way to get them to a compost bin, and that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit. So composting is a little bit complicated, and it's important to get it right, but it's also very difficult to get it right. So the base requirements for a compost pile would be a good green to brown ratio. What does green to brown mean? So if you look to the right, you will see that brown typically means carbon, and green typically means nitrogen. So you're really looking at carbon versus nitrogen materials. And the truth of the matter is that all of these materials have both carbon and nitrogen. It's just that if it's green, it's more likely to have more nitrogen, and if it's brown, it's more likely to be a richer source of carbon. So when you start out making a backyard compost bin, you want to aim for 2 to 3 times more brown than green by volume. But in professional facilities, in places that compost many, many tons, it's a lot more complicated than that. So they have to, at least according to the Cornell Composting Science and Engineering group, an efficient compost pile has to really make sure they balance those green to brown ratios. And so the way that they've done it at Cornell Composting is that they take every single item that you put in there, like every single material, they evaluate its specific carbon to nitrogen ratio, and then they would average it out based on the proportional mass of that material to the other materials that are in there to figure out what an average carbon to nitrogen ratio would be. And so they found out actually that when you want to start out on a compost pile, you actually want more like 30 to 1. So 30 brown to 1 green, which is crazy low, but that is meant for, really industrial facilities, and it seems to work for a lot of compost facilities in the US. But when you're starting a backyard compost, you can generally start to think about 2 to 3 times more brown than green by volume. And if you want to read more about the chemistry behind composting, it is such a fascinating topic, and I highly recommend the Cornell Composting Science and Engineering group for that information. So other than the brown to green ratio, which I sort of explained just now, you are going to need a correct level of moisture. If it's too dry, the microorganisms cannot live there, and if it's too wet, it's just going to get slimy from an excess of microorganisms. So you want to find an appropriate moisture level. There are also acceptable temperature ranges and aeration levels. So for temperature in a compost pile, you want to make sure it's over 60 degrees. And when I read that, I was like, wait a minute, over 60 degrees, wouldn't you have an issue with it getting too hot? And the truth of the matter is that usually you don't have an issue with the pile getting too hot. It's naturally going to warm up, and it's going to get up to 170 degrees Fahrenheit within the first couple days, which I found really, really amazing. But you do not want to let it drop below 60 degrees, and that is super, super important. And then when it comes to aeration levels, compost can actually have a lower aeration than the atmosphere. So that being oxygen, when I say aeration. As you know, our atmosphere might have around 25%, 24% oxygen. In a compost bin, you can have as low as 5%, but you want to have around 10% O2 level, which is really interesting. That is the ideal level. When people are doing their backyard, I keep saying background, when people are doing their backyard composting, they run into problems very commonly. I had a compost bin for about a year, and I ran into problems all the time. And so I found that this little troubleshooting guide is just an example of one of the fantastic resources they have on the internet. It kind of gives you a prescription about what you see, what your problem could be, and what you should do about it. So if you're interested in starting a composting bin, make sure you read up about all the different things that could go wrong and how to fix them. It's a really fun science experiment to have a composting bin, so I recommend it. So let's say you don't want to have a composting bin, because I know that it is difficult, especially for those of us that live in apartments. You can take your compostables to the New Hanover County compost facility at the New Hanover County landfill. You can also take it to a private composting company. We have several in the area, and you can deliver it to the Has Wagon, which ends up at the landfill as well. Wagner Dining Hall and Dub's Cafe, all of the scraps that are composted there go to our landfills facility, which is really, really cool. And they have several different bins for you to store your compost in before you take it, because you're not going to be able to take, compost every day to the landfill. My preferred method is to keep it in a bowl in the fridge or the freezer until you get enough that you can take it somewhere. But they also offer bins that you can just sit out, on the ground, and it will keep it pretty fresh. So if you want to learn where you can drop off compost near you that's not the New Hanover County landfill, if you're at home, let's say you're a UNCW student at home in your hometown right now, check out this QR code, and it's an awesome map from the NCDEQ that has all of your local locations around you. So Annie asked, does it cost anything to bring your compost to the New Hanover County landfill? It does not, which is really, really exciting. So it makes it accessible. All right, so now we're moving on to vermiculture. So I'm really curious, could I get a show of hands with maybe how many people know what vermiculture is? Because it's really odd. Awesome. Well, vermiculture is super interesting, and I got to learn about it over the past couple days. Vermiculture is taking annelid worms, annelid worms, and allowing them to participate in the compost progress. So you're utilizing annelid worms to process organic matter and aid in decomposition to generate rich soil. So step one, the worms eat the compost material. So whatever you put in there, the worms are going to eat. Step two, the worms are going to produce castings, which is another word for manure. And step three, the castings undergo the usual decomposition processes with the help of microorganisms. So what makes worms so good at this? Well, worm castings reduce levels of contaminants, and they make for a really nutrient-dense fertilizer. So they're basically a filtration system, taking out all the really bad stuff in whatever you put in your compost bin, which is really cool. They have even been applied to sewer treatment in the past, annelid worms, which is amazing. And the most common worms that they use in vermiculture are the red wiggler, European night crawlers, African night crawlers, and blue worms. If you get grossed out by worms, I'm sorry for this picture on the left-hand side. But it's important that you remember that the worms are not going to eat everything. And what you can't add to vermicompost, here's just a few examples. You cannot add meat. You cannot add dairy. You shouldn't add citrus, and you also shouldn't add pet food, which is really interesting that those items can't go in a vermiculture bin. So yeah, that's vermiculture. What's awesome about vermicomposting is that you can get really fantastic nutrient-rich compost out of it, but the worms do cost money, and they can die for unexpected reasons, which is why they're not quite as popular as composting so far. So now we have reached TerraCycling, and TerraCycling is another one of those awesome methods of recycling things that you wouldn't normally be able to take to your typical recycling facility. What is TerraCycle? According to their website, they are a social enterprise eliminating the idea of waste, which is such a cool phrase. And so they offer a lot of different services. One of the things they do is they offer boxes for you to purchase to fill with your specific item of your choosing, and then ship back to them to be recycled. And I'm going to show you guys some examples in a little bit, but TerraCycling works, or TerraCycle, the company, works with large manufacturers to feed the recycled materials back into production. And the primary way that they do this is they create plastic pellets out of what they recover. And I have a little picture in the right-hand corner. You can see they're actually holding the pellets made of various plastic recovered sources there. And they also work with some brands to provide free recycling programs. So you might be able to find near you a place where you can drop off these items for free instead of purchasing a box, which is very exciting. And examples of this include Barilla pasta pouches and Arm & Hammer and OxyClean products. Just so bizarre that those brands, even like that, have partnered with TerraCycle to become more sustainable. I think it's fantastic. So you can explore options near you with their search bar, and you can just type in TerraCycle.com, or I think that's it, and on the main page you will see a waste stream box and a location box. If you just want to see what's near you that you can recycle, don't type anything in the waste stream box. If you want to say, where can I recycle my this, then you want to type that in there. But it'll give you a map, and the one that I have on the left-hand corner is locations in Wilmington where you can recycle contacts, which is so cool. But they also have so many other programs, including the bulb eater, which crushes spent fluorescent lamps of any length and captures 99.99% of the vapors released, which, as you know, if you've ever broken a light bulb, there's a little puff of vapor. So I think that's super cool that TerraCycle is able to provide that service and safely get rid of those vapors. TerraCycle also does zero waste boxes, and they have one all-in-one zero waste box that you can purchase. They have coffee capsule boxes, they have safety equipment boxes, glove boxes, things like that. And offices, households, and organizations can purchase these for their spaces, and then once it's full, they can send it back to TerraCycle. So here are some TerraCycle program examples, and I've got two circled, and those are the ones that we actually participate in here at UNCW. That's the snack bag recycling program and the cigarette waste recycling program. So if you've been in the library around the snack area or the vending machine area on the first floor of Randall, you will see a TerraCycle bin for snack bag recycling, and you can take pretty much any snack bag and pouch there and place it there for free and recycle it there. You will also see, as you walk around the library, you'll see 13 cigarette recycling canisters attached to the regular cigarette canisters. And if you put your cigarettes in there, they will be picked up by the amazing Keep New Hanover Beautiful organization and then sent via TerraCycle to be recycled. As you can tell, there are lots of other products that TerraCycle recycles, which is really exciting. And I just want to finish by showing two of TerraCycle's programs in action here at UNCW that I've already spoken about. So we have the cigarette recycling canisters on the left and the snack wrapper recycling on the right. So thanks so much for listening in. I have sources here, and I would love to take questions if you have them.